Well, good evening and welcome. Yes, it's yet another one of our, well, hopefully classic interview. I know it's going to be because we've got a proper, true, genuine legend with us this evening. It's Chris Payne. Chris, how are you?
Sorry, I was looking for you in legend.
I was talking about Phil. No, of course I wasn't. It's great to have you joining us, Chris. Thank you very much indeed. I'm also joined by our good friend Phil Goodall as well, who's obviously our co-presenter on here. So, Chris, you're joining us from, I think, Normandy.
That's right, correct. Just outside Dieppe, about half an hour from Rouen in northern France. And it's probably just as hot over here as it is where you are.
Yeah, I've got a slight glow on as it stands this evening. It is a touch toasty. So, Chris, you've had an utterly amazing career that stands behind you and in front of you. So what we wanted to chat about was, well, the whole of your career really, because you started off as a classically trained musician, didn't you? That was your beginnings.
It was actually, to be honest with you, I came into music fairly late. Most people are starting violin or whatever, guitar or having flute lessons when they're about 6, 7, 8 years old. And or piano lessons or whatever chosen instrument. I discovered the viola at school when I was about 14, coming on 15.
Right.
And I don't know what it was actually. I think I just picked it up. I just looked at it and thought, this is just a really large violin. What's that about?
Yeah.
My music teacher explained to me, how the viola fitted into the orchestra. I just started playing it. It was just instant. It's an instant love affair, with that instrument. So I kind of fast tracked my way just by practicing all the time because I just adored it so much. Fast tracked my way up through the grades and to grade 8. I think it was. And you had to get to be able to qualify for music college. Grade 5, or maybe it's grade 8 again on the second instrument, I can't remember. So I cheated on the second instrument. I played recorders because they're bloody easy. So I thought, I'm not going to go through all that hell of, trying to get grade 5 piano. And I just started music. So I fast tracked with the recorder and viola and took A-level music and ended up going to Chichester College of Music.
That would
be in 1975.
So what did you specialise in? So when you went to,
Well, during those days, all music colleges, most of them were, bespoke music colleges. You'd have places which still exist today, obviously the Royal Academy, Trinity College London, London School of Music, etc. The Royal Manchester College or School, I can't remember what they're called. But they're and of course Guildhall, which is a very famous one as well. And so everyone tried to sort of aspire to go to these sort of places. But to be honest, because I was late coming into music, Chichester, I'm not demeaning Chichester. It's a really, really, really good college. But it was easier to get into a college like that than it was to get into to go a bit higher into sort of Trinity or Royal Academy. Well, certainly Royal Academy would have been beyond me at that stage. So I was quite content actually. I did my 3 years there. I had great tuition. In fact, actually, the course teacher, she was called Annie Lawrence, amazing lady. She brought in various peripatetic teachers from the Academy and the Guildhall School of Music, because they all lived in a sort of Surrey, Sussex, Midhurst area. So, it was convenient for them to pop in and train us lot, And I was really fortunate. I had an incredible teacher called Keith Cummings. You could look him up. He was an amazingly very famous viola violin player in his day. Right. So yeah, that's basically how I started. Sorry to keep waffling on, but I did warn you. I do like to chat.
So did you specialise in viola when you were at college then, or did you diversify?
Well, it was a course. It's not like courses now where, oh gosh, I wish I was young again now, because you could take courses in engineering, rock music, pop. There's a whole broad spectrum of music. Back then it was only classical, and the only thing I could do, which is kind of slightly, off curriculum, was I got involved with medieval instruments. I went to see this outfit who I ended up playing for actually for a while, called Musica Antiqua. Right. All sounds very posh and highbrow, doesn't it? And they're playing all this stuff. I didn't know anything about it at the time. Actually, I'll tell you what it was. No, I tell you what it was. It was Musica Antiqua, but a dear friend of mine at school brought this record round one day, okay, and I'll tell you who he was. This guy was called Robin Driscoll, and he said, Chris, you got to listen to this. And we listened to this, all these crumhorns are playing, and Rouch fives, and flutes, and lutes, and God knows what else. So I thought, wow, I love this. And Robin Driscoll actually went on to write Mr. Bean.
No, really? Wow.
Yeah. I've lost touch with him, over the years, but I was briefly in touch with him a couple of years ago. But he basically, the writer of Mr. Bean got me into medieval music.
That's incredible. So obviously, I mean, you completed your degree or whatever it was that you did there, and then okay, so you got your diploma, and you've got some classical music sitting behind you there. So where did that lead on to then? How did that follow into something else?
Well, this is very interesting. Well, it is for me anyway. You might probably bore the arse off your readers, your listeners. Sorry, not readers, listeners. Sorry, I just did a magazine interview recently, and I thought, sorry, we're live. We're on radio, and people are looking at me. I should have brushed my hair. There you go. Anyway, no, but okay. So to answer that question, I intended to. Well, basically, I had a gap year. I was going to go and travel a little bit and save up enough money to do a postgraduate course in medieval music or early music, early Renaissance music. And I can't remember what college I was going to try and get into, because this is very, very specialized. And I don't think at the time there were many places that could offer those type of courses. Yeah. So I was just noodling around, earning a bit of money, working for the local council, actually, sort of like, digging up flower beds and, cutting branches off trees, whatever. And the freezing cold winter around the sort of Shoreham Lancing area in Sussex. And a friend of mine, he turned up one day with an Enemy or Melody Maker, one of those, rock or music journals from the early 80s, or late 70s, actually, this would have been. And he said, look, there's a band here looking for a violin player and a synth. They wanted someone to come along and play violin and keyboards for a tour. And that was the ad, and that's all it is. So I thought, well, I'll give that a go. So I answered the ad, and I spoke to a guy on the phone who was a chap called Martin Mills, who was the head of Beggars Banquet Records.
Right.
I didn't know him from Adam at the time, of course. So he gave me all the details. He goes, okay, auditions are at somewhere in Earl's Court. Now, Beggars Banquet were based in Earl's Court, so it could have been their basement or whatever. So anyway, I just sort of like, I go up, I jumped on a train with an Elka string machine and my violin. That was it. And I arrived at Earl's Court, finally find a place, get introduced to the band, and I walked in this room, and there was Gary Numan with his blonde hair and earrings, and one ring in his ear, I think, and there's Paul Gardner and Gary's uncle Siginard drumming, and at the time, now Jess was going to leave the band, and eventually he was replaced by Sid Sharpley. You probably know that. Yeah. And so I auditioned, and this is the God's honest truth. I was confronted by this mini moog, and Gary said, have you played synth? So I went, oh yeah, I'll play synth. So that's no problem at all. I didn't have a clue. So we're jamming away on this top, and I'm just looking at, and I'm just working it out, going, okay, obviously I can work this out. This is like the pipe organ, 32 foot 16/8. So I can work my way through that. There's some filters there. I don't really know what they do. I don't understand. At the time, I didn't really understand cut-off and resonance and everything else. Anyway, just by luck, I just pushed it. I looked and I thought, oh, it's a sustain. I'll put some of that on. I just sort of bluffed my way through it, doing this crazy solo. And he loved it. And then I picked up the violin. He said, oh, you violin great. So I picked up the violin. I was just like jamming away on some rock number they did. And he just said, great, that's absolutely fantastic. I'm putting 5 stars down for you. I thought that's very kind of you. And that was my introduction to Gary and Paul. And I think, I can't remember the exact time scale, but it would have been about a week or two later, I had a call from Martin Mills saying, oh, if I wanted to join the band, the door was open for me.
What a call. What a call that must have been.
It would have been, but of course at the time, got to remember, this is Tubeway Army, and no one had ever heard of him. Yeah. No one had, this would either be, I can't remember the exact date. I mean, this could be researched, but It was either late 78 or early 79 when I went for the audition. I say it's late 78 because then I say I was with Numan from 78 till 90. So it gives me an extra year. My 10-year with Gary Numan. But it's interesting because if you think about it, I've gone from, the 14th century, okay, music, just like rocketed into the 20th century. All these things. Talk about going from the sublime to the ridiculous, but there you go. Off I was. The crumb halls were packed away for a few years while I learned the synths.
Well, exactly. So did you have to literally kind of just pick that up quickly and go, right, okay, I'm going to have to do a bit of cramming here?
I had no idea. Well, I played my Elka string machine. There's only 2 strings on it. Strings and worse strings. It was like that. So I did a bit of that, so it was okay. But it was a fast learning curve for me because when I had joined, to do the rehearsals for the whistle test, and the likes of Billy Curry all of a sudden on board, and he's he's absolutely a phenomenal synth player. Yeah. And I had to really get my head down, and it's interesting because whenever anybody asks me what is my favorite analog synthesizer, I always go it's the Mini Moog because that's the one I learned synthesis on. Yeah. Gary lent me the Moog, and I remember sitting in this flat above. Sed and I had this flat above. The Beggars Bank, one of the Beggars Banquet record shops in Ealing High Street. It was pretty empty and pretty grim actually, but there was a bed there and a toilet that worked, so we were happy. And there was me with the Mini Moog and headphones on, and I just spent hours and hours and hours learning that beast, and practicing like mad. I just wouldn't let it go. I was up till 3 a.m. I was trying all sorts of things, remembering the filter, trying to understand the basis of analog synthesis back then, and which was probably, as Phil, it's fundamentally quite simple now. There's various protocols to follow and to create sounds. It's quite easy, but it was a mystery, and you got things wrong. You're messing around with filters before you'd actually set other parameters before then, and. I just fell in love with it. I just thought that's for me. So when people ask me, I'll always say my favourite's the Mini Moog. You listen to Billy Curry, and obviously he's well known for his skills on the ARP Odyssey. Absolutely scream. It was phenomenal. Absolutely incredible player. When we played live doing On Broadway, cover of On Broadway, on Numan's first tour, he did a solo at the end, which in my opinion is one of the best synth solos ever. It's just for I used to sit there because I'm just playing chords behind him, I was just watching him play, there's something else. And I funny enough, I never got on with it. The Odyssey is a great sound, but it wasn't a keyboard which I particularly favoured. I guess I was so in awe of what he was doing, and I'm not being sycophantic when I say that. He's one of the I think he'll go down in history as one of the outstanding synth players.
Absolutely. And you did 11 years, I think, with Gary Numan as well, didn't you?
Well, if it's 12 if we count.
Exactly.
Say 11 years.
And then during that time as well, you also formed the band. I think that was during that time, Dramatist as well, wasn't it?
No, that was formed actually with Gary's incredible success with. Tubeway Army, Our Friends Electric being at #1, followed by Cars, which is Gary Numan. And that confused some people, but it just had to fall into place, just one after the other. He always said when we joined, he said, "Look, I'm dropping Tubeway Army and using the name Gary Numan." So after that, between '79 when he had the first #1s as with Our Friends Electric and Cars, things just got chaotic. We were just did 2 world tours. We squeezed in, the Pleasure Principle album was recorded just before all these hits. And then the Telecom album was recorded between the world tours as well. So it's just like mayhem, our feet didn't touch the floor, which is exciting. When you're a 22, 23-year-old lad, we're all young, it was a absolutely phenomenal time to be part of what you look back on now as being part of this epic stage set, this incredible dystopian, futuristic the towers and the lights and stuff like that. And it might look a bit dated now, but you've got to bear in mind this is 1979. No one had ever seen anything like it.
State of the art then. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I never actually got to see you guys live. Don't know if you did, Phil.
Yeah, I saw him in the 1980s. I saw him going in probably at the twilight of his career. But I've seen him, I think, the most of any other artist since. The last time I saw him was at Moog Fest in 2016 in America.
Okay.
But what I wanted to ask you, were you paid a wage, or were you on sort of percentage of the record sales, like a proper band?
Well, up until sorry, I didn't finish. I do beg your pardon, Jules. I didn't finish your
That's all right.
last question. Up until the Dramatis period, which is at the end of the first Wembley, end of the Wembley shows. You did these three major shows at Wembley Arena in 1981, and then Dramatis formed, etc., etc. But sorry, what was your question again, Phil? Sorry, I'm just trying to link this.
Were you paid a wage? Because it was a long time for being banned.
Yeah, I've got it. Yeah. So up until the Wembley shows, we were paid a wage, and we had a percentage of royalties as well. But record royalties, not publishing, because obviously Gary was the writer. So yeah, we had. I mean, they weren't massive, but it was a nice. We did all right.
Yeah.
Can't complain. And plus the. I don't know what we were on. It's a retainer. I have no idea what we were paid, but we were paid a retainer.
It's kind of not about the money at that point. It's like when we were talking to you the other week, Phil. It's not about the money really. It's just about the experience of doing something, and it's just phenomenal. Right.
The reason I asked that question is because for 12 years of being in a band, there becomes a point where you've got to make a living. And I just wondered how you sustained that amount of time working for Gary, because it's
we were retained, so that by having a retainer, we were at his, we were his band. We couldn't just dash off and do something else. So it was in his interest as well to secure our services, so we didn't go blasting off doing other stuff. We could do, we did sessions and things, but Gary was the priority act, and quite right so. I mean, he why would you want to go elsewhere when you're involved with such an incredibly, at the time, creative and different and new and stuff like that. All of a sudden there's this like a powerful analog synth sound. So people hadn't heard before, because Gary would insist. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but a lot of the time, Gary would program my synths, to say that's the sound I want, and put them through MXR, phase, gone doublers, and gone. And he'd hit the thing, the whole tower would shake. That's what he was like. What made him actually stand out from a lot of other people is Gary did not know where to draw the line. It was all about power. If I got the maximum out of a synth, he would go that stage further. You know what I mean? It would have to be boom like that to get that excitement, that adrenaline rush of those massive, massive sounds. And I mean, it was a good job actually. We had AC/DC's PA system, which is really the frequencies we're putting through that'd be tough.
That's phenomenal. So again, when talking about writing as well, then obviously we've got to kind of skip on, because you've got a fantastic writing career behind you as well.
Well, it's you're talking about Fate of Grey Visage. Well, that's my only commercial success today, because I'll be honest with you, I'm not a songwriter. I don't write melody or top line. Even at this moment in time, I don't know if you know this, but Rusty Egan has reformed Visage, and we're doing a show in Belgium at the end of at the W Fest in Belgium. We're all just before Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark, and that's our first live show. We have Zane Griff as our lead singer. Zane has worked with people like Kate Bush and David Bowie and Hans Zimmer and God knows how many people. He's a great, really nice guy. He's got a great voice. There's elements of Bowie in his voice. So if you don't know Zane, check him out. David Brooks is the other keyboard player. Now, I kind of said to Rusty Egan, I said, look, we need someone who's a bit more techie than me, because I'm not really I'm too old. Well, I'm not. I mean, I understand how computers work. Of course, I do. I run Pro Tools on my computer and everything else. But I'm quite happy now, just playing piano and violin when I play live stuff. I was supporting Gary Numan on his classical music tour in 2018, and I was more than happy just to play piano and violin. Now, the point to all this is that I got David Brooks in, who's Gary's present keyboard player.
Right.
So it's a nice link there. The old keyboard player, the old Git, and the young one. So that he's part of the Visage setup, along with Zane and Rusty. Now, the unfortunate thing with the Belgium show is that Zane, because he's in New Zealand, can't get over for it because it's just going to be prohibitively expensive. So we've got a couple of other guests. David Dodley, who's a brilliant guitar player, session guitar player and drummer, and a singer called Andy Huntley, who I've worked with before on doing one live show with him, and he was guesting vocals with Rusty and on Rusty's album, Welcome to the Dance Floor. Now, I say that because, I know I'm rushing ahead here, but it's just backtracking a little bit. That I write I write a lot of classical music, and I've done for films and media and production music. But when I write songs, I write just the foundation, and that's what I did with Fade to Grey. It's just the bass line and the chords. And whatever I do, I try to come up with interesting patterns and chords, and let other people, take over the process and write a melody. Now, on recently, about 5 years ago, on Rusty's album, I repeated the process of Fade to Grey again. So I wrote these backing chords, okay, and because Rusty and Midge have got a history going back to the Rich Kids, they've known each other for years. Yeah. And Midge wrote he dismantled it and rebuilt the song, but he wrote the melody and the words to this song called Glorious. Right. So, the same sort of thing was happening again. It was like I'm the foundation. The guy just writes the chords and the rhythm or whatever, and the process is then taken by somebody else. And melody and lyrics are added. That's what's happening with Zane when I'm writing. So my so-called inverted commas career in writing music is actually very limited. It's extremely limited in terms of success. I've made my living out of writing what's called production music and film media music. That's what's kept me going all these years. And in terms of composing, it's a bit, but it's more. And I'm continuing to do that, as we speak. I'm like, one big project. I'm like, oh God, I haven't even started it yet. Well, listen to this. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if you take Rusty, right? He's like, God bless him. He's love him to death, but he's a nutcase, and it will come up with this idea. We're going to do 30 songs. Rusty, we're going to be on stage for 4 hours. So, cut it down to the hour and a half that we've got at the Belgian Festival. It's 20 songs, okay? Now, I've just come back from the Dordogne, and I'm back in my house in Normandy going, for God's sake, I've got to learn 20 songs. And actually, to be fair, I know 3 of the songs, but one of them I wrote.
It does help.
So I've got like another 17 songs to learn. It's like, oh my God.
But I mean, you say that you didn't say only, but you do the chords and the bass line for that song. But it's the chords and the bass line which are the key to that whole song. That's what makes that so memorable. It really is, though, isn't it? Everybody can remember the chords and the bass line to that song. Everybody can.
Yeah, it was just something. You saw the video that I put on YouTube. It started off as just this like daft little classical piece of piano music, down through a cycle of fifths, or whatever it was, and then when I joined Gary and we were at sound checks for the first tour, the Pledge Principle tour in 1979. I was armed with all these keyboards. I had the Polyboom Voximana and the Mini Boom, and I started rattling it out. And all of a sudden, that rhythm came out, just in octaves. But it was at the time I just thought nothing of it. But it's a rhythm which is actually very unusual.
Yeah.
I'll slow it down. And a lot of people get it wrong because they don't do that extra. Tell when it's not original because you don't have that little. I suppose they would be Semi-quavers. Oh, depends what it is.
So this is why I need Phil here, because Phil knows this stuff and I don't.
I believe there will be semi-quavers. I'll have to have a look at that because I haven't really thought about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, but with the but that pattern actually, and a lot of people just go the da da pa 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 pa. They don't put all little because, to be honest, on a lot of sounds you can't do that. I was lucky enough that. Well, lucky and unlucky, when we recorded it at Martin Russian studio, I knew the guy, the producer of
Human League.
Yeah, well, it's a Human League. Yeah, Altered Images, did he do?
Yeah,
bands, back in the day, and maybe did he do Ultra? No, Martin Russian didn't do Ultravox, I don't think. Anyway, so it's Billy, myself, and Cedric there, and the Mini Moog didn't turn up because it's just after the last date of the first tour. We just finished playing in Sheffield before. Blasted down to London and across to Martin Russian studio. And of course, I just thought, oh my God, I don't have any bass line. So I had to find something on the Polymoog, and it's a brass setting. And that's got a lot of attack. So Phil will get this because it's got a lot of attack.
Yeah.
You do that, and it comes across. It comes across really clearly. And on a lot of other bass synths, that wouldn't come across. You just lose it in a blur of sound and frequencies down that end, especially if you probably more so if you put a bit too much, I don't know. If you're looking at the Mini Moog, I tended to use the stops 32, 16, 16 on the oscillators, so that's low. That's low. And that wouldn't pick up. So yeah, it's just little things like that just, as you say, just as I said, maybe I'm being modest about it, but I don't see it as that. I'm just being factual. It was something that nowadays are looking at as it did act as a springboard. It was bass for someone else to put the melody on. And if you think about it, there's only two ways of writing a song. You start off with chords or a pattern, you put a melody on, or you start off with a melody and put the chords to it.
Exactly that. Exactly. And as I say, the bass line and the chords on that are just the bits that everybody remembers. Everybody can remember that bass line. Everybody could just hum it in their head right now. Yeah. It's just an absolute classic. And Phil, I know you've got a load of synthesizer based questions and a couple of random questions as well that you want to pop out.
Well, the first one I wanted to ask, because in the early days or the mid days of Gary Numan, often he was supported by an act called Nash the Slash. And I just wondered, was that you? With your violin skills, did you go off, put the bandages on, and come back out?
No, we was known as. We met him in Canada. He actually, if you know what we called. He was known as Rock's biggest Burns case.
Was unique, wasn't he?
Yeah, right. No, but we had no support on our first tour, which is a bit weird because I think it would have been. I'm not too sure about this, but I think when we tour America, they have a lot of local bands that turn up. So if you're in New York, they'll that sort of stuff. And I don't think Gary wasn't too happy about that. I might have that wrong, but I've got a feeling he wasn't too happy about it. And I don't blame him because it kind of it messes up the sort of continuity of touring. So especially on that before we had Nash as our support, we were touring. The tour before that was the British tour of the Pleasure Principle. We had LMD supporting us, Paul and Andy. And Winston, their tape machine. And so, Nash, well, somehow, what happened was we were rehearsing in Toronto with a full set for a week. Then we had to fly down to New York to do Saturday Night Live, which is one of their biggest TV shows.
Yeah.
When we asked one of the guys on the show, he said, has this got a big audience? He goes, well, anything between 30 and 50 million.
It's all right. Yeah.
Anyway, so we managed to get through that one reasonably unscathed and flew back to Toronto. And then we were invited out to a nightclub to see this guy. And we walk into this club and there's this weird bloke, just with a white suit, white hat with bandages on, playing the most weird left field music you can imagine. Do you remember the Jan and Dean Dead Man's Curve? Dead Man's Curve? It's a great song from the 60s.
Yeah.
I think it's Jan and Dean that wrote it. I'm not sure, but anyway, he was playing that with an electric mandolin his mad electric violin stuff. He was going like that, and it's just sensational. So he was invited on the tour, and God bless him, he
we
died.
were speculating whether he was
4 or 5
still
years
alive.
ago.
Yeah,
no, 4 or 5 years ago. He was a lot older than us, and because this is quite, he's a well-built guy, quite an imposing figure, and of course it was all very enigmatic. No one knew who this guy was, and we did. And the thing is that nobody came up to him because he looked like a bank. He was the most, kind of unassuming, innocuous figure you could, ever hope to meet. He was just a nothing. Having said he's a nothing person, I don't mean that. He was a
just an ordinary person,
intelligent person, but you walk past him in the street and go, or not,
We've stumbled across the reincarnation of Nash the Slash, and if you haven't come across him, he's the amazing Dr. Tentacles. And we played a couple of his songs on our show, and he is utterly the amazing Dr. Tentacles. Look him up; he is astonishing, absolutely brilliant. He really, really is.
Can you send me a link after that? I mean,
absolutely.
I love all that stuff.
Yeah, he's absolutely brilliant.
It sounds brilliant.
So, have you got any release stuff that you're working on now, Chris? Or what sort of stuff are you working on now for the future?
Well, there's a big project, or potentially big project, with a guy I know in LA. He's a producer, and we're just knocking this putting this thing together. I was brought into it by a wonderful, lovely lady called Leanne Langford, who sadly died last year. So we're kind of working this through to, not just as a tribute to her, but as a very, very interesting story. It's actually a story based on a book by a guy called Joe McCann called The Replicant, which is in turn based on the characters of early Gary Numan's recordings.
Right.
So
that's brilliant.
But fingers crossed that'll come off. But who knows? I mean, it's the guy I'm working with is. It comes from a dynasty of Hollywood filmmakers, and so he's well placed. But hey, you just don't know. Visage, obviously, I'm working on that.
Yeah,
I'm working on an EP with Zane, the guy who's the singer with Visage, because that's kind of these are things that we can't use for Visage, but we get on really well as a songwriting partnership.
Yeah,
it's something we realised writing the Visage stuff. So I've got something which I shot a video to actually. With two very, very good actors, Carolyn Seymour and Keith Drinkle, who were well-known actors in their day. Well, they still are. You can go and look them up. You'll see they've done a lot of stuff. And that was only done actually in the Dordogne a couple of weeks ago. And we had this young filmmaker called Kate Hugswell, and she's directing these people in their 74, they're holding the camera and all that sort of stuff. And the song is very, very, it's very sad. It's about people who have lost love. Their relationships are falling apart. And instead of using young people, we use old people, because old people don't get enough recognition in videos. You never see old people in videos, do you?
Not really.
No, that's right.
So it's an interesting take. But what is incredible about this, I've seen some of the footage, but I haven't seen the finished thing yet. But this girl, is just so confident, so brilliant, and she's directing these guys who have been, Carolyn's acted with Peter O'Toole. I mean, she was married to Peter Medak, who, directed The Changeling and The Craze and stuff like that. So, no place. And Carolyn was saying that she's a phenomenal, and Keith was going, "Oh gosh, she's amazing." And this girl was directing. Do you know what's incredible about this girl? She's 18.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
She's 18 years old, and she's incredible. I can't wait to see it. So anyway, that's something which is interesting. And you've got this lovely mix of the creative part of making videos, which is something I love anyway. Something I did in the Celtic when I was very much involved in my Cornish project called Celtic Legend. We got a lot of videos produced and recorded and put on the Classic FM TV. I don't know if you remember Classic FM TV. That was brilliant. So such a shame that it disappeared off the satellite, so to speak. But there you go. But
was that the stuff? Sorry to interrupt, Chris. Was that stuff done in the Cornish language?
Yeah, that's it. It's all.
That's it. Yeah.
And we had. I managed to through somebody I knew who worked for the Cornishman. He was a writer and journalist. He introduced me to a guy called Tim Saunders, who was because I wanted some Cornish in this, some traditional Cornish, and he wrote the words to it, and he kept saying, "Look, I've got." Like, my daughter sings, all the rest of it. And it's like you get people saying, my daughter's a great singer, and the rest of it.
Yeah.
Right, And then, anyway, he sent me a tape, and I listened to it. It was Gwen Saunders singing. I thought, Jesus, that's just the voice. It's amazing. So I said, yeah, let's have, if she's available, it's fine. And then I found out, and then Gwen came to a good friend of mine, Nigel Bates. He's a producer. And this was when he had his studio in Lewis. This is going back now, 2005, something like that. So anyway, Gwen came along, and she did the vocal in like 2 hours. It was just really amazing. I found out as well that she was actually one of those river dance dancers. She danced with Michael Flatley.
Oh, really?
All this river dance stuff, and Lord of the Dance and all that sort of stuff. It's just like, wow. And I love all that. It's just that's the surprising adventure of music. You just go through life and projects, and it's funny how people come on that Celtic legend thing as well. We had I had Peter Sarstead writing the lyrics. Do you remember? Where do you go to
yeah.
And another guy in it, because I made it a bit of a sort of kind of theatrical thing. And the guy playing in King Mark, because it was Tristan and Isolde, the first production, the first album, and the guy singing that, probably King Mark of Cornwall, was Arthur Brown. As in Arthur Brown's Kingdom Come.
Really?
A fire and all that sort of stuff.
Incredible.
Amazing. So that's what I love about doing things like this. If you commit to something, sometimes you just end up working with the most wonderful people.
Yeah, it is phenomenal, and it is that sliding doors thing again, isn't it? That it's like we were talking to Phil and to Dominic Hawken the other week about how did your career start? How did these things happen? And it turns out it's very much the same for you. It's that sliding doors thing where there's an opportunity that comes, and you either take it or you don't, and all of a sudden that just escalates and escalates and escalates, and it turns into something, or it doesn't, as the case may be.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, Celtic Legend was a relative failure, but it was still great. I mean, Gwen was only involved in that one song, but she was featured in the video because we wanted to emphasise the Cornish stuff on it. And then for the second album, we decided to go with a girl from the Medieval Babes. Have you heard of the Medieval Babes? Well, they're a bunch of girls who sing medieval music, but they're completely mad. One of them, Emily, was she was she's a Cornish lass. So I said, look, we're looking for a Cornish singer. Will you come on board? She said, yeah, I'd love to. And then we got her on board, and it turns out, it's another piece of another lyric written by Tim Saunders in Cornish, and I wrote the music for it. And then Em turned up, actually. My friend Nigel, in the meantime, had moved from his studio from Lewis down to the Dordogne. So Emily and her boyfriend flew in, and she sang, and then and she was like, going, actually, I don't speak Cornish. And we go, all right, okay. So we had to get Tim to write everything out phonetically so she could sing it like that. But she did the entire second album, the Leoness album, and co-wrote quite a few things with me. Wow. She was very, very good.
So brilliant. So she picked up the Cornish anyway and managed to achieve it in the end by using the phonetics. So that kind of worked out all right, I guess, then.
It worked out brilliantly. Absolutely fantastic. But she went on, we're kind of still in touch, actually. I'll just quickly mention it because she's an extraordinary character. She goes from Medieval Babes to this, then she joins this sort of like, I don't know, sort of gothic death metal band called Pythia. Okay. That's after Celtic Legend, being Celtic Legend, Medieval Babes, Celtic Legend, death metal band, and she's now a priest. She's a church vicar.
Wow.
Brilliant.
She's doing this Christian stuff, and she's working with there's a rock band called Dragon Force. I don't know if you remember or heard of them.
No.
And with some guy doing some kind of Christian rock Celtic stuff.
Yeah.
And I'll be doing a violin with and flute, Irish flute. Here it is here, this sort of stuff. That sort of Lord of the Rings thing, So that's what I love. I just love the quirkiness of sometimes this business. When you go from someone who's now, gone from death metal bands.
Yeah,
she hasn't changed. Brilliant.
Well, it's phenomenal. And Chris, it's been an utter pleasure talking to you tonight. It really has. And just listening to your experiences through the years and just how things have panned out and all the rest of it, it's just amazing. It really is. And it's so nice to hear, things are still progressing on and you're still innovating and doing stuff out there, even with the medieval instruments. It's brilliant.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm not, this will go on until I drop. There's no such thing as retirement in my life. I'm just carrying on. I advise anybody to do that. Even if you don't make any money out of it, it doesn't matter. It's being creative more than making money. And at the end of the day, you need to make money to live. But I do okay, I must admit. But I also have to work as an acupuncturist, as I think I told you before. Yeah. So there you go. But just be creative. Be creative.
Talking about being creative, we've got a brilliant song of yours coming up now, which is, forgive me if I'm not pronouncing this correctly, Nocturne for Piano and Synths. Is that right?
That's right.
That's correct.
Brilliant. Yeah. So you were just starting to tell us about that before, Chris, as well, and it sounds just such a great concept as well. So if you just tell us a little bit about that, then we'll kick straight into that.
Sure. It was something that I was toying around with. I wanted to try and capture the emotion and atmosphere of you've got a piano and orchestra. But take the orchestra away and replace that with synths, arrangements of synths, and capture the same emotion. And hopefully I've done it. It's different. If I would have orchestrated it, it would have sounded different. But the important thing is the emotions there. So hopefully it's worked.
Well, it's a phenomenal piece of music. Phil and I have already had a listen to it, and we know everybody else is going to enjoy it so much. Phil, I know I talk a lot, Phil. Anyway, have you got any last questions before we dive out?
No, I was just going to say I made a note that because I've been on your website, Chris, and I saw the Nocturne for Piano and Synths, and I just wrote down perfect for our show. So I'm glad we've got the opportunity to play it. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's no problem at all. Well, it's been a really, really good fun, and good luck with the show and the shows in the future. And, please send me a copy, and I'll send my lawyers around.
Absolutely. I can do with a few more solicitors' letters. Yeah, perfect. Chris Payne, it's been an utter pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. Let's just have a listen to Nocturne for Piano and Synths.